Hello, everyone, and welcome to Researching in the Southwestern United States. This is part one, record types. My name is Sarah Day, and I will be presenting this series. So the first question you may be having is, where exactly is the Southwestern United States? So it is this area on the map that you can see that is circled. It includes the states of California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. So we're going to talk about record types in this series. So the first one you need to know about is vital records. So the first type of vital record is birth records. So why might you use birth records? So they may include names, genders, birth date, and place, parents' names, which might include the mother's maiden name, the parents' birthplaces, and ages. So this could get you back another generation and give you additional information about the person you're researching. The birth record may also include religious affiliation, whoever the medical attendant was, whether it was a nurse or a doctor or a midwife. And it also may include the home address or residence of the family. Then over on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see this table that lists all the states that are in the Southwest. The earliest known date of records when they started being created. So for example, in Arizona, the earliest ones are from 1855. And then over farther right, one more column, there is the statewide dates. So this is when the state required that each state record all of the births in the state. So these dates are when it was required. Compliance didn't tend to happen until a few years after the mandate was made, but these are the dates where you can at least start expecting that you should be finding one. Earliest, it's you might. Okay, next up is marriage records. So things that you might be able to find on a marriage record include the names of the bride and groom, obviously enough, the date and place of the marriage, the birth date and place of birth of your bride and groom, the parents' names and birth dates and or their birthplaces, so connecting to who the parents are for both spouses, the witnesses. The witnesses might be related to your bride and groom, so this can help you with fan club research because it gives you family members or neighbors, other people that the bride and groom tended to know. Then the occupations of your bride and groom may be listed, so you can know what they did. And then their previous marital status. So if they were married before and divorced or widowed, or if this is their first marriage, that might be on there as well. Then over here, we have types of records. So shockingly enough, there are a lot of different types of marriage records. There's bans, bonds, applications, licenses, consent papers, contracts, settlements, certificates, returns, registers, and personal copies. So depending on which record you're looking at, it'll give you a different set of information. So for example, if you are looking at the actual marriage certificate, that's going to be the document that was done after they were actually married. And so we'll list that information. If you're looking at consent papers, this might be because someone was underage. And so dad's signing off that, yeah, my daughter can be married, even though she's under the legal age. And it might list other information like that. So each one will include different information and will have different dates on it. Then as you can see, there's a table again. Earliest meaning the earliest possible ones that they exist, and then statewide is when there's that requirement. As you will notice, Arizona and New Mexico do not even today have a statewide mandate. So just be aware of that. Most of the counties within those states do require it, but the state itself does not. Next up is death records. So things you might find in a death record. Name, age, birth date, birthplace, the cause of death, the death date and death place, the maiden name, if you're dealing with a female, the informant's name, so who gave the information. This is usually a close family member, so a kid or a spouse, a parent. This can give you an idea of how reliable the information is based on how much the informant probably knows. The parents' names, birthplaces, and birth dates, a surviving spouse and or child, occupations, again, marital status, were they married, were they not, how many times, etc. And then residence, where were they living before they died, where did they die, etc. And then another table that has all of the states listed, the earliest, and then the statewide mandate. As you can see, Colorado still does not have a statewide mandate in place, but most of the counties do. So, if you are looking at a time period before one of those dates that you saw on the previous screens for birth, marriage, or death, you can use alternate or substitute records. So these tend to contain the similar or same information as you would find in a vital record. These are just other ways to get it. So we have church records, cemetery records, censuses, Social Security, both the Social Security claims and applications and the Social Security death index. Newspapers, obituaries, periodicals, military records, probates, histories. This can be a personal, local, state, county, city, etc. Whatever histories there are, some on specific counties or for specific places or for specific families. And then family Bibles tend to include this type of information if your family is lucky enough to have one. Next up is census records. So, first let's talk about the federal population schedules. So these are the censuses that most people think of that were taken every 10 years due to the United States mandate when the country was founded, included in the Constitution. When you think of census, this is what you're thinking of. So information that was included from the 1850 census on was name, age, sex, color, occupation, real estate value, and birthplace. Each census tended to gain more questions. Earlier ones have less, later ones have more. So I just picked a few of the most helpful and or interesting ones that are found on later censuses. But if you look online, you can see a complete listing of each of the censuses and the questions it asked. So other information you might be able to find depending on the census. So are the parents of foreign birth? What's the naturalization status of the person? Are they disabled in any way? What language is spoken at home? What language do they speak? The number of children born to the mother. This can be super helpful. This was asked on the 1900 and 1910 census. It can help you know if you're missing any kids in your family. If it says, I had 7 kids born and there's only 3 in the household, you know you need to look for 4 more kids. If they were a veteran, some list what war, what was their age when they first got married, do they have a radio set? I just found that one an interesting one. And then their Social Security status. Here are the dates that are available for the federal population schedules, what they will be listed as. So like, for example, Arizona, 1850 and 1860, it will be listed as New Mexico Territory because Arizona was part of the New Mexico Territory until 1864. Then from 1870 to the present, you'll just find it as Arizona. While on the other hand, California, always listed as California due to its gaining from Mexico, and it almost immediately became a state. So from 1850 on, it'll just be listed as California. Then there's just all the other states and their dates for our region. Next are the non-population schedules. So this one, you're not going to find your ancestor and their family and all their names and the stuff about them. These ones are special. So like the agricultural schedule or the industry, the mortality, the slave, these are all different types of non-population schedules. They were only taken from 1850 to 1890 for the most part, and not every state participated in each of them. So this is just a listing of the different years, what ones were included and which states participated. So, for example, in 1880, there's the mortality, which includes everyone who died within the last year, and it was taken in Utah, California, Nevada, Colorado, and Arizona, but not in New Mexico. So you don't want to look for it if your ancestor died in New Mexico. Or the industry. Only California took that in 1880. And so that's the only state you need to be looking for it in. Next are the state and territorial census records. So these were taken just by the state or just by the territory. They were not taken nationwide, and each state and or territory got to choose when it took it. Things that might be included are name, sex, age, the event place, so where they were living, their birthplace, and the birth year. As you can see, some states took very few. Utah only has one territorial census. They don't even have any state censuses. Whereas Arizona has 7 territorial censuses. So it really just depends on the state and or territory and what they decided to do. So then there are other censuses that you may be able to find. So there's the Mexican colonial, the Indian/Native American. These can be further divided. There's general ones that list all Native Americans, and then there's specific ones. So like I believe it was 1900, they did one for the Ute tribe. So some are very tribe specific. There are school censuses. There are agency records. There are the Spanish colonial census, and then the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints did a church census from 1916 until 1960. And so there are just other censuses that may list information if your people were on them. Next up is church records. So we have the largest religious groups. So the Roman Catholics, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Baptists, the Greek Orthodox, the Methodist, Presbyterian, Protestant, Episcopal, and the non-denominational Evangelical Protestant. These are the main religious groups within these states, though not the only ones. So your ancestor probably belonged to one of these, but may have belonged to a different group, such as they might have been Jewish, or they might have been Muslim, they might have been a whole myriad of other religions, but these are the main ones. So the types of church records that might be found are baptisms and christenings, marriages, funerals and burials, membership lists, minutes, historical narratives, religious leader records, so like a history of whoever the religious leader was, whether it be a minister or a priest or any other religious leader. And then Sunday school attendance is another really cool one. So what things might you find on a church record? You might find names, important dates like birth, baptism, christening, marriage, death, burial, many different things. Parents' names, their dates, their places, their occupations, whether the kid was legitimate or not. Witnesses, again, these might be close relatives or neighbors, someone that your ancestor knew very well. Their residence, where they lived, occupations of your ancestor, family relationships, cause of death, biography of the person, a congregational information, membership information, pew lists, where your ancestors were sitting, which pew they had, and donation lists. Did they have money to donate? This might be important information to know. Then just things to be careful of. There are many close matches, so be very careful when looking at church records. And then many records are held at the local church. They aren't at other repositories. So you may need to make a phone call, write a letter or an email, or even visit to have any type of access to the church records. Next up is newspapers. So newspapers are more than just headlines and obituaries. They include obituaries, but there are also death or funeral announcements, marriage announcements, birth announcements, society news and or gossip, different politics that were going on, legal stories or actions. So if your ancestor was in some legal trouble, there might be a story about them in the newspaper. Advertisements, personal columns, and then just general news stories about what was going on. So all of this may lead you to be able to identify a birth, marriage, or death certificate, land records, court records, naturalization records, passenger or immigration records, school records, censuses, city directories, tax records. So the information you find in the newspapers can be really helpful in finding other records. And it can just help you learn more about your ancestor as an entire person and more relevant and interesting details about their lives. So where should you look for newspapers? You should look on from the Library of Congress. Chronicling America is their website. Newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank. Cindy's List has a great list of newspapers. Local papers. So if you knew they lived in this one specific city, look up what paper was there and then see if you can find if they have records of said paper. And then state or local archives sometimes hold the papers. Next up is directories. So there are many different types of directories. The most common one is a city directory, but there are also like telephone books, yellow pages, business directories, professional directories, organizational directories, religious directories, the post office directory, or the street directory. So information that could be on these records are the inhabitants, the family members, and may list spouses and or children, the occupation of your ancestor, where they lived, and then businesses, and then locations of buildings. So you might know, oh, they lived right next door to the church, or the school was really far from their house, or they had a park really nearby. And so you can just learn what the location of different businesses, shops, and buildings were. So why should you use directories? So it can help you learn about their lives, what they did for a living, where they lived. Was it a rich or a poor area? It can help you locate nearby family or relatives. If there's someone with the same last name living next door, it might be a relative. It can also help you trace families between census years. Censuses were really only taken every 10 years, so you can learn the exact years that your ancestor may have lived in a location or even a specific house. Next up is cemeteries. So there are a lot of different types of cemeteries. There's church cemeteries, government cemeteries, military cemeteries, corporate cemeteries, family cemeteries, private, prison, and unmarked. So there's a whole lot of different types, and each one is owned by a different person and has different rules surrounding it and different information that will be included on the records. But things that you may be able to find from cemetery records are names, birth dates, death dates / burial dates, locations, where did they live, and then death place, or burial place because you'll be at the cemetery. Marriage information, family members. A lot of people are buried next to a spouse and or parents or children, so you can find them too. And then symbols on the graves may be religious, military, beliefs, quotes, and maybe I'll just tell you something about the person. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 with me, and I hope you'll get to join me with part 2. We're going to be talking about important groups in the Southwestern United States. Thanks, everybody. Bye.